Hi, I'm Lisa, and I'm here to show you and demo this gorgeous, cute little apron for September. This is our design, so I like to party, and by party I mean staying home and sewing. So anyway, and some of you have been asking about Jess Smith, and she is alive and well and doing very well. I just saw her last Saturday, and but she is very busy. She decided to go back to school and get her master's degree. So she's still here in town, but she's doing online learning, and she is doing well. And I'm sure she misses you, like we miss her, but she is well, and that's why I get to step in. I get to step into her shoes, and it is my honor to do that. So here we go. Okay. Hi, Kimberbellas and fellas. Again, we're here. We're going to make this. We're going to start out. Here's our supplies for our apron, our Kimberbell apron. You should receive teal, gray, some SF101, and I have it in 2 pieces. I'm just going to iron it on the back here. Some Kimberbell tape. Here's the threads that I'm going to use, and 5x7 hoop, ruler, and Kimberbell's Perfect Stick. So I'm going to take the apron out. I'm going to get it ready, and I'm going to hoop our Perfect Stick and iron this on. So I'll get back to you in just a second. Okay, everybody, I thought maybe I should probably demo how you put your sticky back glossy paper, glossy side on top. I'm going to tighten this up a little bit. Righty-tighty. And they have you scoring all around the outside. A lot of times, I think last time I did this, I scored an X in the center. I think that was just a tad bit easier for me to get to, but you say to score. And then if you tear just a little bit, it's okay. Okay, so I'm going to tear this off. And it says next to go over to the machine, and I want you to load your crosshairs in there, and you're going to stitch right on this sticky tape. And it won't, your foot of your machine doesn't come down so far that it would stick. So you're good to go there. Okay, I'm going over to my machine, and I just have white thread in. I'll be able to see it because it'll be kind of white on white. And I'm going to stitch this out. Okay, everybody, so your next step after stitching the crosshairs straight directly onto the stabilizer, it says to take your apron and fold it so that the wrong side is out. So I'm going to do that for you. Get all these extra threads off. I always have threads on my shirt, so I always tell my husband it's an occupational hazard to have. And if that's the worst that happens in your occupation, I'm golden. Okay, so it's saying to measure down 5 inches. So I'm going to get that out of the way. And got my handy dandy. Okay. Yeah, I might have to have you stop. Okay. Fold apron in half, lengthways, right sides together, aligning the edges, finger press well along the fold. Okay, so it says to finger press really well on the fold. I'm going to line this up a little bit. Okay, measure down 5 inches. So I'm just going to take this, I'm just going to make a mark. I'm using a fancy friction pen. And then it wants you to fold down that, right on that line. So I fold, keeping the lengthwise fold aligned, fold the apron down. And finger press well. Okay, so our next step is to, I've measured down 5 inches, and then you make like a nice crease on both sides. Now, you need to put your hoop straight up and down like this, but your design is going to stitch that way. So ask me how I know. That's Pam's famous line. And then you're going to fold it over this way, right along that. And I'm going to move it up this way. So again, ask me how I know that I did it wrong once before. So you want to make sure that your straps, the top of your straps are on the right-hand side, because your design is going to stitch that way, so that you read it like this. So the bulk of your, now I could mirror it, you know, I could flip the design, but I did put it in this way. So the bulk of your apron is going to be over here on the left. So you're going to kind of want to bunch it up, tape it, pin it. I think they have you pin it on the instructions. So you want to put it in this way. Here's the bottom of your hoop. And then this is going to be the bottom of the design. The left is going to be the bottom of the design. So I'm going to move over to my machine, and you'll want to load in the actual design, not the, I've already done the crosshairs as you noticed. So load in the design. So your first stitch is going to be the tack down stitch. So I'm just going to go ahead and stitch this out. Okay, next I'm going to wiggle this kind of in here, and I've already ironed on my SF101, and it fits in this 5x7 hoop really nicely. So I'm going to make sure that I've got the stitching covered. One thing there, you don't have to match up lines. This is a nice polka dot. So I'm going to do the tack down stitch. Okay, so after that tack down stitch, you do not have to trim around this gray yet. It says in the steps, do not trim. So I went ahead and changed my thread to a dark gray. Now I like the Floriani, it's number 486. So it's kind of popular. I probably will be using this throughout the whole stitching, most of it. So this is going to stitch the sewing machine base. This next stitch, or the next step, is the outline of the sewing machine bottom. So I went ahead and changed thread to black, which is 900 in the Floriani. So here we go. Okay, so we stitched out that base outline for the sewing machine, and I went ahead and changed my thread to an aqua just because I don't want it to have to compete with the black. I know it's another, thread change, but I just, so I went ahead and put in the aqua, which is number 369 in the Floriani line. So I'm going to stitch that out. That way, I'm afraid this is kind of thin, so I didn't want it to show through, even though it is going to be stitched around. I just didn't want it to show through. So here goes the next step. Trim these threads. Okay, so you want to make sure that you get that covered with this beautiful teal, aqua, light green, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to have it stitch it down. Sometimes they might have you tape. I just place it down. Okay, I'm going to take this out, but never take it out of the hoop until you're completely finished. I'm going to trim around this teal so we can move on to the next step. And we are back for the satin stitching around our little teal sewing machine. Now this thread is just a little bit darker, but I think it's a nice touch. So we'll come back. Okay, so your next step is going to do some little details on the sewing machine, and the pattern calls for white, so I kind of have some knock your socks off white. It's Floriani 801, so I'm going to go ahead and stitch those out. Okay, so I'm back. And we are going to stitch out the machine detail, or that dial and some of the machine details. I thought black might be too stark, so I went ahead with the gray Floriani, the 486. So I hope this is a nice contrast. Okay, so the next step is going to be the thread spool, and your pattern calls for yellow, and I'm not necessarily a big yellow fan, so I went ahead with purple because I love purple and teal together. So I'm going to stitch that out next. Okay, so the next step, it has you stitching out the thread, and it has like maybe a darker yellow. I am just going to leave the same thread color in. I'm not real sure if they think that's going to give it some depth or something, so I'm just going to leave the same thread color in rather than changing around and all of that. We didn't have a whole wide range of purples, so I'm just going to use the same one, and I do that a lot. So, and your machine doesn't know what color it's supposed to have in there, so you can choose whatever thread color you want. Okay, so this next step is just remember with the old-fashioned, some of you are probably too young to remember this, but you used to have wooden spools. So I went ahead and chose kind of like that light wooden color for the spool that wraps, that you wrap your thread around. So here we go. Okay, so the next step calls for the little pin cushion to the right of the machine. And I kind of chose a sort of a, I thought I was choosing salmon, but it's more of like a knock your socks off pink. So it's number 105 in the Floriani line. So here we go. Okay, so our next step is the base of the pin cushion. So I just went back to that old trusty dark gray, the 486. So I'm going to stitch that out and I'll get back to you. Okay, so the next step is the pins that are in the pin cushion, and I thought you might get kind of mad at me if I use the dark gray again, so I went ahead and switched to a lighter gray, which is number 483, and so we'll have some nice shiny pins in our pin cushion. Okay, so for this next section, we're going to be stitching out letters. And my good friend Pam taught me very well. Obi-Wan has taught me very well. And I went ahead and changed my bobbin thread to a medium gray color, because sometimes when you're stitching letters, that bobbin thread can come up a little bit. So I didn't want the white or the ivory to come up, popping up. So I went ahead and changed the bobbin, and I'm going to use the dark gray 486. And this is a nice long stitch out. It's 11 minutes. So we'll be back after hopefully it stitches out real well. Okay, so the last part, the last stitch out, is the border around the outside of this panel, and I went ahead and already trimmed around it. So I tried to trim around as close as I could, and we're going to do the last stitching, which is a satin stitch around this, around the whole design. Okay, so your apron, I Like to Party, is all finished. So now you do really get to go party. And I'm going to go ahead and just take this out and remove all of the stabilizer, and we are good to go. So enjoy your apron.